Welcome to the Story Lab and to the last episode of this season. As this is a finale for us, let's look at a finale of another series. We are talking about the original Battlestar Galactica, the one from 1987 that ran for only one season. This is a great shame, and others have thought so as well. In 1999 a continuation was attempted but couldn't get off the ground, and in the 2000s it was rebooted, but the original story remains unfinished. So, could we do it? Could we end the original Battlestar Galactica? Today, we will attempt exactly that by writing a Battlestar Galactica movie that should be the ultimate finale of the show. First, let's review where the original series left us when it was cancelled. The human fleet under the leadership of the Battlestar Galactica is well on the way to Earth and has encountered light beings that have slowly eased them on the right way. The Cylons have fallen behind but have not completely lost the Galactica's trail. Lucifer is in command of the fleet now, since Boltar has been a captive on the Galactica. Boltar has recently been freed and left behind on a desolate planet, after helping the colonial warriors destroy a Cylon Battlestar. The Galactica has received a transmission, seemingly coming from a great distance, but clearly depicting the moon landing from 1969. It is one more sign that the Galactica is on the right path. A few things to note: though there seems to be little connection to the actual Earth, the Galactica has encountered countless human civilizations on their way already. And, though they seem to be based in the colony's galaxy, the Cylons are still around and actually seem to get smarter the farther away we go. What are the themes and morals of the original show that we of course have to keep in mind for the movie? Battlestar is classic sci-fi, bringing in themes such as clones, alien societies and astrophysical puzzles. At the same time, it is a classic romance drama, especially with the relationships of its main characters Apollo and Starbuck. There is a lot of religious symbolism and some of exploration of where it might have come from, be it stars, pyramids, angels and demons or whatever. Human ingenuity in crisis and genuine friendship are further themes of the series, and there is the idea of moving on to a higher existence far beyond human life. Nice, those themes will be a part of our first ingredient for this story. A story that combines all the themes of Battlestar Galactica and brings it to a satisfying conclusion. Furthermore, we will have the following ingredients: the movie should feature the Galactica's arrival at Earth and their reaction to it. The story plays out in the present past, not the future, so Earth is not a spacefaring society. The Cylons are to be the main villains. All characters should have a bit of a journey. The end should be an end, but also the beginning of something new. That sounds like a lot to work with. Let's put it in and let it be analyzed. A word of warning: while this is cooking, to make the story feel truly finished, even if some move on, a main character might have to die. But, let's just go and see. The lab has already completed its analysis. Let's have a look. Battlestar Galactica final movie. The movie starts with a cold open, a habitable but desolate planet, where a lonely figure sits around. It is Boltar, who had been marooned there at the end of the series. A ship appears in orbit above him, it lands and Cylons climb out, picking up Boltar despite his protests. Weirdly, not all of the Cylons are Sylvan, some are in fact golden, and they seem to be in command. Eagle-eyed viewer might remember that there was a single golden Cylon already in the last episode of the series, though it was never explained why. Boltar is taken to a giant base star and brought before another Cylon, a huge imposing figure with one massive eye. The giant Cylon, which is also golden, explains why he had sent his underlings, which seems to include Lucifer at this point, to pick up Boltar. The giant Cylon is the original Imperius leader. In fact, he claims the Cylons of the Cobalt Galaxy are but an inferior offshoot of the real Cylons, his golden Cylons. The golden giant intends to take control of the Empire again, as soon as the colonial warriors are dealt with. To that end, he had picked up Boltar again. Since Lucifer had failed to follow the Galactica without Boltar's guidance, the golden giant had deduced that Boltar's help was still needed. he would be given one last chance to take down the Galactica using some of the more advanced Golden Silence ships. We then get to the opening credits with a triumphant version of the classic Battlestar Galactica music and scenes of the human fleet entering a new galaxy. When the credits stop, a log entry begins. It is Commander Adama speaking. He tells us that the Galactica had traveled for another 2 or 3 years since we last saw them and had encountered many more signs of the 13th tribe's journey. Now, they had entered yet another new galaxy where the traces of their ancestors had disappeared. Instead, they had met another highly intelligent race of aliens living on an advanced planet. Though they have limited spacefaring capabilities, they seem to be very well informed about the local area. Adama has traveled down to their planet to go through their records and maybe find some information. In the meantime, the Galactica's fighters are on scout trips in the surrounding systems. Our pilots are operating in 2 teams, one being Boomer and Sheba and the other our favorite pair of Starbuck and Apollo. Starbuck and Apollo discover a strange siren-like signal and follow it to a lonely stony planet with little atmosphere at the surface. Initially unable to pinpoint the signal because of the unusually strong magnetic field, the 2 pilots set down on the planet and try to investigate on foot. But then, they fall into a hole into the interior of the planet. To their surprise, they find that the planet is inhabited. There is a species living inside the planet, knowing nothing of the outside world, having never seen the stars, etc. Starbuck and Apollo try to explain these concepts to the inside dwellers and want to communicate the importance of finding the source of the weird signal, but the inhabitants are unable to comprehend what they are saying. Instead, they speak of energy being gods, which goes over the head of the 2 pilots. In a different system, Boomer and Sheba accidentally stumble across the Golden Silence fleet. Clearly identifying the threat, the pilots immediately turn back, but the robots had of course already seen them. Worse, this is the very fleet that Boltar had been given to command. He did not hesitate and immediately ordered his forces to follow the Vipers and attack the Galactica. Adama's discussions with the alien scholars are quite fruitful. In fact, the aliens seem to know of Earth and are willing to give the Galactica the exact coordinates. However, the aliens wonder what Adama hopes to find there, since Earth isn't a particularly special planet. Adama explains the story of the 13th colony and the aliens seem to recognize it. Curiously though, they call Earth the 7th colony and seem to think that Kobol was the lost 13th. But before this can be further discussed, the Golden Silence fleet shows up and a big battle begins. The aliens, that are working with Adama, quickly decide to help them in the fight against the base stars. With the planet's orbital weaponry firing, the Galactica and her Vipers can easily protect the fleet. However, the Cylons are adapting as well, now firing on the planet instead, trying to take out the heavy cannons. Adama, still down on the planet, is suddenly in great danger. When Colonel Tai considers it too dangerous to send a shuttle, Athena makes a snap decision and abandons her post to go get Adama. Baxi, who happened to be on the bridge, takes over his aunt's post, saying he had spent the last 2 years studying every move of his family and would know exactly what to do. The battle continues, and Athena does get a shuttle down to the planet, picking up her father. However, on their way back, Athena and Adama are hit and Adama is critically wounded. While Athena brings the shuttle home, the aliens on the planet below ask the Galactica to escape, in the hopes that the Cylons would also turn around. Thus, Colonel Tai recovers all fighters and gives the fleet the order to leave the system. Unfortunately, the Cylons do destroy the friendly aliens, though. In the medical bay, Adama uses his last few breaths before slipping into a coma to tell the crew the coordinates of Earth that he had learned from the aliens. Interpreting this as possibly Adama's last wish, Tai set course for the coordinates, which are not far away in the same region. Meanwhile, Starbuck and Apollo had given up trying to explain the inhabitants of the hollow planet, what the outside was, and instead asked for directions to something akin to base. Indeed, there is a way through the many tunnels that make up the underworld of this planet. Once at the metallic structure, Starbuck and Apollo enter a weird base that seems to be primarily a huge power reactor. It takes them a while to figure it all out, but finally, they piece together that this is a power station, a Cylon power station, the origin of their seemingly endless supply of energy. This was its origin. This also explains why the Cylons in this galaxy seemed superior to the ones in the Cobalt galaxy and why the Cylons had actually become stronger the closer the fleet had come to Earth. Speaking of Cylons, the two warriors are quickly discovered by the advanced Golden Cylons and driven out of the power structure. They narrowly make it out and find their way back to the fleet. Once there, Apollo and Starbuck learn what had happened and visit the comatose Adama as well as the guilty-feeling Athena. Their own report is of course also met with great interest and sparks a discussion among the ruling council of the fleet, until Tai suddenly announces that they were about to arrive at the coordinates of Earth. As the planet comes into view, everyone is trying to get a glimpse of it on a view screen or better yet a window. This time, it really is Earth of about the 1990s. Despite the planet obviously being incapable of saving the fleet from the Cylons, everyone on the bridge is in awe. In fact, they hardly realize that the Doctor is leading in another admirer. Commander Adama had just woken up. Back at the Cylons, Baltar is not having such a great time. Having failed once more, and having in fact allowed the Galactica to reach Earth, Baltar is punished and imprisoned, and the Golden Giant instead puts Lucifer in charge of the fleet, the entire Golden Fleet this time. The reason is simple: Lucifer is tasked with destroying Earth. Knowing that it would only be a matter of time now, until the Cylons tracked them to Earth itself, and having seen that the planet is incapable of defending itself, the Colonials realize that it is their duty to protect Earth from the coming attack. Finally, the Council agrees with Starbuck and Apollo that the best way to save Earth would be to go back to the power station and somehow destroy it. A commando troop consisting of Apollo, Starbuck, Sheba, and Cassiopeia is put together. Baxi is of course not allowed to go along, but offers Muffet as a fifth team member. Boomer also has to stay behind, since he is being promoted and put in charge of Blue Squadron. The team takes a new stealth shuttle called Serena to sneak back into the system with the power station. To no one's surprise, the base is now heavily guarded. But the pilot still knew where the hole into the interior of the planet was and so managed to get onto the planet in a more or less undetected manner. Naturally, their way then led them to the interior once more. While there, they tried to talk to the inhabitants again, desperate to tell them of the danger that they would bring on their planet, and offering them to organize an evacuation. But the people of the hollow planet would not understand and did not see it right to leave. Finally, the Colonials decided not to further interfere with their lives. At this point, Lucifer was attacking Earth and Battlestar Galactica was fiercely defending the planet. And they were not alone, most of the fleet positioned themselves in the way as well, some even firing lasers out of the bulkheads to do their part. The commando troop reaches the facility, but cannot get to the reactor because they constantly encounter Cylons. There is an especially precarious situation when they are nearly discovered, that is however mysteriously resolved from one moment to the other when a blinding light appears. Still trapped though, the team has no time to think about the light and instead makes the difficult decision to strap explosives to Muffet and send him through the ducts to the reactor, sacrificing themselves and the mechanical Daggett. But before they can do that, they are suddenly surrounded again, but not by Cylons. This time there are beings made out of pure light. The lights inexplicably transport them back to the caves. When they speak, Apollo realizes that the lights have the same voices as the inhabitants of the planet. The lights confirm Apollo's suspicion. Yes, they were the same and they had only pretended to be simple people to test the colonial warriors, whether they would take the inhabitants away against their will, because they felt it right, or whether the colonials would accept their freedom of choice. And there is more, the light beings say that this was not the only test they had given to humanity. In fact, it was the second to last. They explain that they had followed and manipulated the development of the human race for countless generations. It is again Apollo who recognizes the connection. It had been the light beings who had built the Cylons. The lights answer that not exactly. They had only reactivated them using this power station as another test for humanity. Sheba finds this horrible, but the lights disagree. They were etherical beings that did not think on the time span of a single life. And the fight against the Cylons had brought the colonials further than any other human civilization. They had united against a common foe, developed incredible technology and still upkept their morals, respect for life and sense of duty as a species. And after all, the lights say, they did not exactly send them the smartest enemy. Naturally, the team still finds this difficult to comprehend, but Apollo asks the most important question: why all of that? And the light beings answer that they thought humanity, or at least those from the colonies, was ready to move on, beyond the world and slowly develop into a species more like themselves. The light beings would accompany them on that journey. And strangely, this does feel right to the team. There is a catch though: the light beings still want humanity to overcome the Cylons, the last test. And so, the team is still forced to go through with the Muffet plan. Starbuck volunteers to take Muffet back into the complex, which would most likely mean sacrificing his own life. Apollo is hard-pressed to accept that, as is Cassiopeia, but Starbuck convinces them, saying that someone had to do it, and the bright future as purified supermoral light beings was simply not for him. That, he argued, was the future for Apollo and Sheba. Cassiopeia still does not want him to go, but Starbuck half-quips that after all, the moment Muffet made the core explode and the Cylons were done for, the lights could still save him, right? And half-smiling, half-deeply saddened Cassiopeia finally lets him go. In the meantime, the Cylons themselves are quite perplexed by what is going on. The Golden Giant has Boltar brought to him, asking the traitor to explain the humans' actions. Of course, Boltar cannot help, nor is he inclined to. Then, on the screen, he sees Muffet show up, covered in explosives, walking towards the reactor core. The big Cylon is even more confused, but Boltar simply laughs out loud and congratulates Adama and his warriors, just before the entire complex blows up. Apollo, Sheba, and Cassiopeia are flying away in their shuttle, seeing the whole planet explode behind them. At the same time, the Cylons throughout the entire galaxy shut down, and the battle at Earth is won. No one knows what happened to Starbuck. When Sheba cautiously asks whether Starbuck might have been right, and the light saved him. And Apollo says, maybe they would meet him again one day, on the long journey that still lies ahead. Then, their shuttle reunites with the Galactica. There is a long reunion and a minute of remembrance for Starbuck, then Apollo introduces the humans to the light beings that had followed them back. And soon, the Galactica and her fleet depart, with Apollo at the helm, towards the future, to a journey beyond the realms of human understanding, leaving Earth behind, unaware of anything that had gone on. And that was it. Did you like it? Here is a quick summary. The Galactica reaches Earth, but even more dangerous Cylons are here too and attack the planet. Just before, the Colonials had discovered a secret power station that seemed to give the Cylons life. A commando troop returns there to shut it down. Proving humanity's worth in this most precarious hour, light beings reveal themselves, that are the ones behind the Cylons in the first place, having used them as a test for humanity's readiness to move on to higher form of being. By destroying the Cylons once and for all, the Colonials do prove that they are ready, although one would not come with them on this journey is Starbuck, who sacrifices himself to stop the Cylons. Please note that everything presented here is simply the results of an experiment. No part of this presentation is intended as a correction of an existing story or claims to be the real story. The selection or omission of any parts of the source material is not to be understood as commentary, positive or negative, on the original productions. These are simply thoughts and experiments based on existing material, and none of it could be created without the work of all those involved in creating the original works. As with any scientific result, you may utilize any of the story ideas that resulted from these experiments for your own experiments or production, while citing this experiment as its source. It is now closing time for our lab. Goodbye until next time.